Hi everyone, it's Gina. I'm continuing my effort at creating something every day for this year, 2022. And this was inspired by Daisy Yellow Art, who has 365 somethings this year. So, I'm starting off with my Strathmore 9x12 journal. This is an incomplete piece. I ran out of time, so I had to rush out the door. So I think this is the first time that I've actually started something and will be continuing it at a later date. Hopefully tomorrow, please God. But here we go. So I decided to, as you saw, I divided my page. I didn't measure, I just averaged in quote unquote half. And then I drew a triangle, and now I'm trying to draw a square. I don't know, I guess I needed the guidance of a container cover to do it, but I don't know, it's like I couldn't visualize it unless I actually put it down on the paper. You know, I knew I wanted it to be at an angle, but for some reason I couldn't do it without putting it down first. So I'm drawing my square while trying to. It didn't turn out squarish. So yeah, that happened. But that's okay. All my sides didn't measure the same length. That's how I know it's not squarish. But that's okay. And I am going to paint the shapes after I'm done trying to draw it. So I'm erasing any marks outside and inside of my shapes because I want the shapes to be plain inside, no lines or anything. So I'm just erasing those pencil lines. But I wanted to keep my half mark line because I actually have a plan. I have a plan with the half thing. Although I don't know if I'm going to use it, but anyway. So my red is drying up. The cover broke off. So I used to keep the cover on, you know, like just resting on it, but it's beginning to dry out. It's quite thick and gummy, but it's still very usable. So it wasn't running out, so I cut it in half and I'm using that. It's very thick, so I'm just gonna mix it with water, but I want it to be really nice and rich. You know, I don't want it to be a watery red. So I'm trying to apply it as thick as I can, but because of how it dried up, I had to spread it. And then I changed brushes because, well, yeah, I was having some issues with the corners. The brush wasn't sharp enough. So I found my square brush, and I'm using that and trying to get my lines as straight as I possibly can without like taping it or using a ruler. And I'm just applying those colors. My colors that I'm using for my shapes are blue and red. How did I come up with these colors? I wanted contrasting colors and I wanted strong colors. That was the gist of it. And I saw the blue and the red and I thought, okay, I think this could work. So I'm just applying paint in those areas, trying to get it as rich as possible and as neat as possible. Right, so I'm pretty much done. I decided to let it dry, and depending on how I thought it looked, I would probably apply another layer. I dried that, and now I'm gonna add some shapes on the outside of these two shapes that I put in. So I couldn't find my cutting mat. I did, like I said, time was of the essence this morning. It was really tight. So I just used an old book and found an old piece of cardstock, drew my triangle shape on it and cut it out. Looking at it now, I realize it's kind of big, but you know, when you're rushing, these things don't occur to you at the time. And now I'm going to draw a small square. This looks like a rectangle, so I'm going to kind of go back in and adjust it and then cut it out. So now I'm using my stencils that I just made just to make some random shapes on the page. Well, it's not random shapes, it's squares and it's triangles, but I'm gonna put them randomly on the page, and I don't want them to be filled in completely. I just want them to kind of be like a semi-transparent. So the brush had the paint on it still. I didn't add any water, so I'm just using so you could say it's a dry brush with the paint. I didn't add any extra water. I didn't add any extra paint to do this. I'm just applying the leftover paint through the squares, and then I'm going back over, kind of staggering the shape, the stencil over the squares that I did before, and trying to do a lighter shade of the square. So when I placed my stencil of the triangle on the page, I was like, wow, this is huge. Huge. So my red brush was practically dry, so I had to wet it, and I tried to wet it without washing it out completely and leaving some water in so that I could do these triangle shapes, because as I said, I don't want it the same richness as the larger shape. I really should have made a much smaller triangle. This is too big, but that's okay. Work with what we have in the time that we have. That's okay. And because I hadn't created in so many days, I thought, just try and get something done. So I rinsed out my brush a tiny bit again, and I patted it on the towel again so that I could get an even more washed out shade of red. And then I'm just applying that over the shapes that I just did, just like what I did with the squares. So now I'm done with that, and I'm not sure what to do and how to do what I think I want to do. And then when I turned it upside down, I realized that my square is way too small because the triangle is so heavy on the page. It's just like, it's too overpowering. So now I'm going to go through a process of trying to increase the size of my square. And of course, it's not a square because all sides are not equal, but let's pretend that it is. Let's pretend it's a square. Maybe when I get back to it, I'll try and fix it and turn it into like a real square, quote unquote. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. So at this point, I was trying to decide if I should just go over the whole square, like paint the entire square over the triangle, because remember that part of the triangle was over the original square, and I was going to leave it, but then I thought, you know what, just paint over it. It's fine. If you don't like it, when you look at it again when you get back home, just, I told myself that I would just do over the top of the triangle. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to make my life easy, especially because of time constraints, I just did the whole square over, and yeah, that looks much better. So this is it for now. Stay tuned for part 2. I'm looking forward to your comments, and I hope you come join me for part 2. Bye.